Hi there, and welcome to Ghostly Trails. I'm Robin Shuckburgh, and tonight we're going to be taking you into the world of spook and shiver as we explore some of Great Britain's most chilling ghost stories and haunted hotspots. The sounds of hushed voices from empty rooms, shadowy figures sweeping through the dark in the dead of night, the slamming of doors, the smashing of glasses, and the foreboding sense of unease. Tonight we will meet spirits from across history. Some will be well-behaved, others fun and sentimental. Many will be a dark presence rooted in evil. And some, of course, will be shrouded in mystery forever. Join us if you dare. We'll begin in the Welsh capital, looking for the ghosts of Cardiff Castle and Cardiff Infirmary, before travelling to the Brecon Beacons, where an ancient inn with a dark past is said to house some resident ghosts. In Chester, we'll find the ghost of a Roman legionnaire roaming the old walls. In Hereford, we'll investigate ghostly reports from its wonderful cathedral. And in Nottingham, we'll delve into an ancient network of caves, where all kinds of poltergeist activity has been reported. North of Birmingham, the sinister folklore of Cannock Chase Forest awaits, where we may catch a glimpse of the black-eyed child or the infamous Pigman. We'll finish at one of the most haunted villages in the country, Prestbury, with its array of ghosts, from the black Abbot who wanders the churchyard to the ghostly horsemen of the English Civil War galloping by. For exclusive videos and early access, don't forget you can also become a Ghostly Trails member. And if you want to listen to a monthly ghost story read by me, join our Ghost Story archive over on Patreon. Check the links below. We start with Cardiff Castle and Royal Infirmary. Like most great castles in England, Cardiff Castle was built by the Normans, originally in the form of a wooden motte and bailey. The castle we see today dates back to the Victorian era, when it was rebuilt in the Gothic style, but the castle keep and rampart walls of those Norman days remain. The most widely reported phantoms that lurk within the walls hail from the early 20th century. They're thought to be that of John Crichton Stuart, the second Marquis of Bute, and his wife, Lady Sophia Rawdon Hastings, who both spent a lot of time in Cardiff before their deaths in 1848 and 1859, respectively. It seems, however, that the couple never truly left their home, as apparitions fitting their descriptions have been sighted all over the castle. The Marquis appears in the library next to the fireplace, in his time probably a doorway, and glides through a thick stone wall towards the chapel. As if to commemorate the time of his passing, it's said that the doors to the main dining room open and shut by themselves every year on March the 18th at exactly 3:45 a.m. Meanwhile, Lady Sophia's ghost seems to haunt the nursery, along with many other rooms that would have been slightly more her domain. During their tenure in 1848, the year of the Marquis's death, a trustee of Lord Bute's father, a Mr. John Boyle, was seated one day in the library when he heard the distinct sound of a carriage rolling down the drive. No doorbell sounded after the carriage came to a halt, and upon an investigation, The butler informed Mr. Boyle that no carriage had arrived. Boyle left the house perplexed and concerned, having heard that the arrival of a spectral carriage was said to be the forewarning of an imminent death in the household. Since that time, all kinds of paranormal phenomena have been reported here, including the sound of disembodied whimpering, the crying of infants, sudden deep drops in temperature on otherwise hot days, strange lights and orbs passing across rooms, as well as furniture and objects moving of their own accord. In 1976, a young couple told of their visit, during which a tall man in a cloak pushed past them in a great hurry. They were unsure who it was, but when the woman turned to look again, she met the gaze of a tall figure in a red cloak, who appeared to be scowling at her. His appearance heavily resembled that in the painting of the second Marquis, hanging on a nearby wall. A faceless grey figure has also been seen in the stock room, the contents of which are often found in a chaotic state after his visit. The identity of this mischievous ghost is a mystery. Close by, in the chapel, the organ can be heard playing all on its own, whilst in the network of underground passages that run underneath the castle, ghostly and entirely silent soldiers have been witnessed, marching, marching, marching. Lastly, in 1975, a worker at the castle was cleaning the dining room one day when he noticed the figure of a man standing at the other end of the room. On inquiring, "Can I help you, sir?" the figure turned to face him and then slowly faded from view. We can't leave Cardiff without a visit to what is renowned as the most haunted hospital in the UK. Built in 1822, Cardiff Royal Infirmary started out as the Cardiff Dispensary, and it operated as the capital's main hospital until 1973, when the University Hospital of Wales opened. It remained, however, the accident and emergency unit for Cardiff until 1999, when only a handful of clinics remained open. In 2014, it was given a new lease of life by a £37 million redevelopment. It's no surprise then that with over 2 centuries of history, ghost stories are rife here. One such ghost, fondly known as the ghostly Matron, was spotted by a plumber who worked in the infirmary. Whilst working in one of the old wards, he got the weird feeling that he was being watched. Turning round quickly, he saw nobody, so he resumed his work. Moments later, he heard the sound of footsteps coming up behind him, and assuming it was just somebody coming to check on his progress, he stood up to greet them. But again, there was nobody there. Now, assuming it was just his imagination, he carried on with his work until he felt the pressure of a hand on his shoulder, feeling the outline of individual fingers. What he saw when he turned round must have given him a shock. The figure of a lady in a grey uniform stood there, staring at him intently. She smiled briefly and then vanished into thin air. More than a little disturbed, the plumber went in search for a security guard. What he found instead, however, was a large portrait hanging outside the entrance of the ward of a former matron of the hospital. He recognized instantly the woman who'd just been staring at him. She was the last ever matron of the Cardiff Royal Infirmary, and she had died in 2008. Several security guards were also convinced that some rather more violent entities haunted the grounds. One legend even said that a grey lady would roam the corridors and that to accept a drink from her would cause your death within days. One of these guards also reported being tapped on the shoulder in the upstairs wards and having his ankle grabbed by an invisible hand. In the early 2000s, convinced that the building was haunted, Father Roy Doxey undertook an exorcism in the pathology department. What happened during that evening is to this day unknown, as the doctors present refuse to discuss or describe their experience. Did it work? I suppose we'll never know. Nestling in the beautiful Brecon Beacons National Park is the oldest and most haunted pub in Wales, the Skirrid Inn. In 1175, an horrific massacre took place nearby. William de Braose, who was the ruthless right hand of the English King John, sought revenge for the death of his uncle, who'd been murdered by Welsh noblemen. He invited 3 of them to share Christmas celebrations with him in the building that then existed on the site of the Skirrid Inn. When they were all gathered, he ordered his men to slaughter them and their company. It has been claimed that this inn dates back to the 1100s, but more solid historical records would appear to show that the building we see today was built in the 1600s. Whatever their age, lurking within the old stone walls and under the timber beams, a host of dark secrets and spine-chilling tales await. During the 17th century, the building served as a courthouse and place of execution. On the upper floor, final judgment would frequently have been served to wrongdoers, from murderers and sheep rustlers to nefarious highwaymen. It's thought that a large oak beam that spans the stairwell once served as a makeshift gallows, and it still bears the marks of the hangman's rope. No less than 183 souls met their end in this building, so it would be strange not to find some ghostly tales here. In fact, staff and visitors have reported tables moving without anyone touching them, and plates mysteriously falling from shelves and walls. In one bizarre incident, a £10 note with coins stacked on top was said to levitate across the entire length of the bar before abruptly dropping to the ground, the coins remaining firmly in their stack. In other areas of the inn, the sounds of footsteps have been reported, as well as the faint sounds of lute music coming from one of the bedrooms. But who are these ghostly visitors? On the staircase up to the guest rooms, a helmeted soldier from centuries past has been seen. Near the area that would once have been a makeshift jail cell, 2 spirits are said to lurk. A man who took his own life in order to avoid the gallows, and the spectre of a former jailer. But it's the 3 guest rooms that seem to have the most activity. In room 1, guests have reported feeling sudden cold spots and the sensation of invisible hands reaching out to touch them. One of the more gentle ghosts is thought to be that of Fanny Price. She was married to one of the inn's proprietors, and in the mid-1800s died of tuberculosis. It's thought that her spirit lingers on in the place she used to call home. It is reported that in room 2, the scent of lavender is sometimes accompanied by the rustle of a dress and petticoat, a sign that the ghost of Fanny Price is paying a visit. Otherwise, strange balls of light have reportedly been seen drifting across the room, and doors have been found to open and close of their own accord. Some have even described the sensation of something tightening around their throats, perhaps a ghostly throwback to the inn's dark past as a place of execution. We cross the border again back into England, entering Herefordshire, a county of rolling hills, wooded valleys, and famous for apple orchards, hop fields, and of course Hereford cattle. In the city centre we find Hereford Cathedral, which, like the city, has a turbulent past, fought over by the Welsh and by both sides in the English Civil War. One tale dates back to the 12th century, where it's alleged the Cathedral Close, the area of greenery around the cathedral, was haunted by a walking corpse. It would appear from the graveyard after dark and be seen lurking around the close, evidently searching for neighbours to terrify and curse. It is said that it brought with it a plague, and that those who heard it even whispering through the crack in their doorway would quickly become sick, and within a few days die. One night the spectral corpse approached the door of Sir William Lawden, a knight who was staying in the close. He took a somewhat dim view of the ghost, and instead of cowering, frightened for his life, when he heard it whispering through his door, he threw open the door and beheaded the phantom with his sword. Since that night, the monster was never seen again, and nobody else succumbed to its fatal curse. In 1055, an army of Welshmen moved to attack Hereford in retaliation for Edward the Confessor having taken some of their land to create the earldom of Hereford. The local regiments were overpowered by the invaders, and those who survived fled back to Hereford, only to find most of the inhabitants fleeing to Worcester, over 25 miles away. 7 distinguished canons sought refuge in the cathedral, hoping to prevent any damage or looting, but alas, this was to no avail. After meeting the invaders outside the cathedral, they were viciously attacked. Just one of the canons managed to flee back inside, and he ran to the high altar. With the invaders in pursuit, the monk held up the holy cross above his head in an attempt to ward off the soldiers, appealing to their Welsh consciences, but they were entirely unfazed, and the monk was ruthlessly slaughtered. The ghost of this canon is now said to haunt the Lady Chapel, and has been seen, dressed in white, drifting around the site where the high altar once stood. Today there are rumours that the organ in the cathedral is played supposedly by an organist from the 17th century, a Mr. John Bull, who cannot resist ghostly recitals, despite being dead for almost 400 years. In the market town of Shrewsbury, close to the Welsh border, we find another group of haunted buildings. We're drawn to Shrewsbury Prison, which can reasonably claim to be the most haunted prison in England. Also known as the Dana, named after the nearby medieval Dana jail, a building on this site was first completed in 1793, and from then was a site for both incarceration and execution. The building you see today was built in 1877. Between 1902 and 1961, 8 executions took place here, the last of which was George Riley, executed for the murder of his 62-year-old neighbour, Adeline Mary Smith. During redevelopment in 1972, his remains were discovered, along with 9 other prisoners who couldn't be identified. It's a dark place indeed. Like so many ghostly sightings, a grey lady is said to wander the corridors by night. It's thought that she's the ghost of a prisoner's wife who committed suicide after her husband's execution. She is described as a mist-like figure in A Wing, always accompanied by an ice-cold chill. The sound of footsteps and faint crying has also been heard in empty hallways, and it's thought to be her, the grey lady, mourning her lost love. One of the more unsettling entities reported at the prison is known as the Shadow Man. He's mostly been spotted in C Wing, appearing in the dead of night as a tall, dark figure, often accompanied by an intense sensation of fear and dread. It's unclear who this could be, though legend says that the Shadow Man is a manifestation of the suffering and anguish endured by all the prisoners over the centuries. Thermal cameras have reportedly even captured an image of a human figure, but one that does not emit heat. Some witnesses have also described the feeling of suffocation when they see him. Another frequently cited ghost is that of a child thought to be the apparition of a young boy from the early 19th century. In those days, it wasn't unusual for children to be imprisoned with their parents, and some claim that he is most likely the child of either an inmate or a prison worker. Small footprints have appeared in dusty corridors, and some visitors have reported hearing childlike giggling coming from the corridors of the prison. Paranormal investigators have even claimed to have captured a recording of a young child calling out for his mother. Could that have been our ghost? Yet another ghost said to roam the prison is that of a wife of a former prison governor. Although little is known about her, some visitors and investigators have encountered a spirit when in the governor's office. Notably, she seems to appear surrounded with the faint smell of lavender lingering in the air, and some have even felt a gentle but firm touch on their shoulders when they are alone. Aside from these identifiable ghosts, the prison seems to host a hotbed of unexplained ghostly activity. In certain cells, the temperature is said to suddenly drop. Unexplained knocking and even loud banging have been heard during investigations, and objects and furniture have been found to move completely of their own accord. Could it be that decades of unresolved trauma, fear, and grief have left their mark on this building, creating the dark atmosphere we feel today? Well, the prison is open to visitors, so perhaps you should come and find out for yourself. Shrewsbury has many other haunted places, which we'll explore in more depth another time. Just a stone's throw away, Shrewsbury Castle is said to be haunted by a 12th century serial killer called Bloody Jack, and ghosts of praying ladies have been sighted down at the Lion Hotel. We will return, but for now, we head north to Chester.
It was founded in 79 AD during the reign of Emperor Vespasian as a castrum or Roman fort. It was home to a Roman legion and later became a major civilian settlement. Chester remains one of only two cities in England, York being the other, where the city walls are still walkable around the entirety of the old centre, save for a few hundred yards. As a Roman city, Chester, named by the Romans as Diva Victrix, was home to one of the 4 Roman legions based in the country. Legend has it that a lovelorn Roman soldier paces these city walls. After falling for a Celtic girl and frequently leaving his post in order to meet with her, the foot soldier was betrayed by her parents. The story goes that one night, when the legionnaire had left his post to meet their daughter, they killed the sentries that were left on guard and snatched up as much loot as they could carry. The ghost story continues that he now patrols the stretch of walls between the ruins of the Roman amphitheatre, located at Vicar's Lane, and what is assumed to have been the site of a Roman watchtower near Newgate, as penance for neglecting his post. The earliest known sightings of the legionary date back to the late Tudor times, but it is likely that the alleged apparition has been seen in the area since the days of the Roman Empire. The ghost is said to be fading over time. Earlier accounts describe the soldier as lifelike, but more recent witnesses state that he is dim and faint. During the English Civil War, King Charles I is said to have watched his army defeated at the Battle of Rowton Moor from the Phoenix Tower, more commonly known today as King Charles Tower, on the city walls. Indeed, from King Charles Tower to the East Gate, the walls sometimes resound to the noise of artillery and musketry, the clang of swords, and the cries of dying soldiers. Cavaliers and their ladies, dressed in their finery, have been seen promenading close to Morgan's Mount, a Civil War battery point. Moving on, we arrive at Ye Olde King's Head Hotel in Lower Bridge Street, a 400-year-old Grade II listed property, reputedly one of the most haunted in the country and said to boast some 13 ghosts residing within its walls. The foundations of the building date back to 1208, having been constructed by Peter the Clerk, the administrator of Chester Castle.
The spirits claimed to haunt its premises reflect the hotel's long history, including English Civil War soldiers, Roman legionnaires, small children and scores of unfortunate young women who worked the grounds as a brothel in the 17th century. Bought by paranormal enthusiast Harry Achilleos in 2013, Ye Olde King's Head has become a ghost tour hotspot in the world of dark paranormal tourism. Over the years, guests have claimed to see everything, from unattended pints being knocked over in the bar, full-body apparitions and eerie mists. It was even included in Sky Picks Paranormal and the TV show Most Haunted in 2014. When the Most Haunted team were filming the show at the pub, odd knocking noises could be heard throughout the process. In the past, the hotel has also won the award for spookiest hotel in the Northwest.
Shortly after buying the hotel, owner Harry Achilleos installed 16 infrared cameras inside the property. Subsequent footage shows a rocking chair in an empty room which appears to be moving all on its own. Achilleos invited Danny Moss, a paranormal investigator best known for his work on the haunted hunts, who was stunned with what he saw. He explained, "We found the footage of the rocking chair moving at 3:28 p.m. in the afternoon, yet there were no guests in the hotel at the time," and that Harry got a notification on his phone saying that there was movement in room 6. He went back and told me and Brett, and we even tried to debunk it, but could not find an explanation for this happening, as the chair is pretty heavy and would not be moved by a draft or people moving around it, for example. I'm quite a scientific person, and I will always look for a rational explanation. And when I can't find one, then that's when I know it's real.
The main story associated with the pub involved a woman who delivered a car to a Chester car dealer on New Year's Eve in 1982. Because of the date, she decided to book into a room at the pub and was housed in room 6 for the night. She was unaware at the time of booking that room 6 could be accessed via 2 stairways, one very narrow and old, and the other via a longer route by the more modern and wider staircase. At around 2 a.m, the woman woke suddenly with an intense feeling that something was not quite right. She heard a clock strike 2 and felt a sensation of cold with a feeling that her hair was standing on end.
As she turned her head, she saw a man dressed in black, silently watching her, and felt confused as to how a stranger had managed to enter a locked bedroom. But when she challenged the man, he just carried on gazing at her. Apparently, once she'd become accustomed to the spectre, the woman no longer felt alarmed, but rather felt a sensation of peace and tranquillity. The apparition remained for about 15 minutes before vanishing, and the woman was so in awe of the soothing and comforting atmosphere that she booked to stay another night. Later, the pub's landlady professed to be unaware of the ghost, but recalled being very reluctant to use the small staircase adjacent to rooms 4, 5 and 6, favouring the more modern staircase. Another story tells how a man had booked a relative and her son in there for a short trip away. When the woman went to bed, the son went out exploring the town. She had told him to let her know when he returned safe, and was reassured when he tried her locked door later that night. The next morning she thanked him for coming to her room the previous night to tell her he had got back safe. But he hadn't. He'd gone straight to bed. The most infamous place in Ye Olde King's Head is, however, room 8, where the Grace doll can be found. She spends her time in a special glass case and is said to be the UK's most haunted artefact. Speaking about the odd occurrences in room 8 previously, Danny Moss has said, "Well, since it arrived in January 2023, we've already had people really struggling to stay in room 8. It seems it really affected men rather than women. We've had men go in there and they can't look at it. They feel anxious and have to get out, struggling to last even 3 minutes. People are hearing the sound of 3 knocks, which is meant to signify the mocking of the Holy Trinity."
It's no doubt common knowledge to many locals that there are so many instances of ghostly activity that the current landlord keeps a file of all the accounts written by overnight guests. It makes one's hair stand on end. Many tell of being scared by drawers opening, wardrobes banging, children running up and down the corridors. Despite their fear, however, it seems they are always keen to return.
Now we head to Nottingham to discover a network of caves that seems to be infested with ghosts. Ye Olde Trip to Jerusalem is believed to have been built in 1189 and suggested to have been a pit stop for Crusader knights, including none other than Richard the Lionheart. In the snug hangs a portrait of an unknown woman, dressed in Victorian-style attire. Upon a fairly recent renovation in the pub, the painting was removed, but when it was placed back on a different wall, several regulars noted that the usually dour-looking woman now had a smile raising from the corner of her mouth. Perhaps she approved of a much better view. However, the real talking point in the pub, known locally as the Trip, is housed in the Rock Lounge located on the 2nd floor. The cursed galleon is infamous not only in Nottingham but in the wider paranormal community. Legend has it that a visiting sailor gifted the wooden model galleon to the pub. The model ship hung downstairs for many years and collected copious amounts of dust, literally hanging from floor to ceiling.
The tale continues that shortly after the galleon was cleaned and relocated elsewhere in the pub, the individual who took on the task apparently passed away. Indeed, the last 3 people to have handled the galleon have all met with a mysterious end soon after doing so. Landlords thereafter have refused to let anyone clean the galleon over the years, hence its grimy condition, and this also explains why the model was placed in a glass case by a spiritualist many decades ago. Over the past few years, ghost hunters have run several paranormal investigations at the Trip. On one occasion they were on a break during a tour and some of the guests and team were in the beer garden when, out of nowhere, there was a mighty crash which hit the tent above the beer garden. Thinking it was someone who had perhaps jumped from the castle wall, what they saw next astounded them. For on the ceiling of the tent, crawling along, were handprints, which then disappeared.
The Rock Lounge also seems to be a hotbed for other supernatural activity. Things such as keys disappear only to turn up later in odd places. Glasses and bottles have been known to fly off the shelves and smash as if flung by invisible hands. Some staff have heard the sound of breaking glass coming from the bar and armed themselves with a dustpan and brush to clear it up, only to find no debris exists.
The ghosts of a man and woman have also been seen by previous landlords. They've been heard calling out, despite the pub being empty of customers. The woman, wearing what appears to be crinoline skirts, was also sighted walking down the stairs into the cellars.
The caves are also said to be haunted by a negative entity and a pirate. The former causes violent poltergeist activity, such as throwing stones and pushing people. It's also said to cause the smell of sulphur. The pirate is believed to have drowned in a well while hiding in one of the caves. Roman soldiers have also been seen emerging from the wall, marching through the cellar, and disappearing into the wall on the opposite side. Others claim that echoes of children and adults can be heard around the caves and that cold spots move around in the tannery, causing feelings of dizziness and concern. Some people feel as though they are being watched, while others feel a huge pressure around them. Moving on, we come to Church Rock Cemetery and the Catacombs, a place of rather extraordinary history and of sinister tales from bygone years. The cemetery is built on the site of the old Gallows Hill, where many men and women were hanged for their crimes, and given the number of hangings and deaths that took place here, it's not surprising there are lots of reports of ghostly sightings. Before the Rock Cemetery, this land was once a working sandstone mine, where large quantities of sandstone rock and fine grains of sand were dug out and used for building material to sell at market. It became known locally as Gallows Hill by the late 17th century, as criminals such as murderers, thieves, poachers and even tax avoiders would be tried at the Shire Hall on those charges and, if found guilty, were sentenced to death.
Located on this site is Robin Hood's Cave, a place discovered in the 1800s during the landscaping by local clergyman George Oliver. He believed that he'd stumbled across a cave network that belonged to an ancient Druid temple, connected to the classic ballads and tales of Robin Hood. The likelihood is that they were just caves left over as a byproduct of the sand mining a couple of centuries before then. This area was originally known as Rope Walk because rope makers worked there. In 1892, the cave became known as Robin Hood's Mammoth Cave, but over the years this was shortened to Robin Hood's Cave.
The apparition of a Victorian lady dressed in white has also allegedly been reported walking around the cemetery at night, while in the catacombs a ghostly miner is said to roam the darkness in the entrance. Here, some visitors during tours have felt a male presence move around them. Coincidence? Or could it be the ghost of a man who, it is recorded, fell to his death through the pit ceiling sometime between the 1700s and 1800s, unaware of where he was walking?
We arrive at Cannock Chase Forest. So far in these episodes, we've explored big cities, visited market towns with haunted pubs, prisons and graveyards, as well as stately homes and villages with all their resident ghosts in tow. Our next location is something a bit different. Cannock Chase, referred to by locals often as just the Chase, deep in the heart of Staffordshire, is a forest covering 26 square miles and a designated area of outstanding natural beauty. It's had a checkered past, from prehistoric human activity to a medieval royal hunting ground, through 700 years of coal mining to a World War I military training ground. A stark contrast to the peaceful place we see today, but still with its share of ghost stories. One of the notable places within Cannock Chase is Castle Ring, a Celtic hill fort that dates back to 500 BC. Legend has it that this eerie site was used by the Celtic tribe known as the Cornovii to perform blood sacrifices and rituals. Being an extremely ancient circle, some paranormal enthusiasts believe it to be a supernatural portal. Indeed, all kinds of fanciful stories are associated with this place, from sightings of UFOs all the way to werewolves, demonic black dogs, and even Bigfoot. In the woods, the ghost of the first Marquis of Anglesey, Henry William Paget, has been seen. The Paget family home stood at the southeastern edge of Cannock Chase, and they would have used the forest extensively as a personal hunting ground. His ghost has been sighted riding on horseback through the woods, often preceded by a pack of ghostly hounds. During the World Wars, Cannock Chase was used as a military camp for the New Zealand Rifle Brigade. A prisoner of war hospital was also set up here, with a capacity for up to 1,000 patients. It's no surprise, then, that the nearby Cannock Chase War Cemetery has had reports of ghostly soldiers clad in distinctive World War I and II uniforms roaming the area. A number of other apparitions have been seen all over the forest. A woman has been seen drifting amongst the trees, dazed and confused, vanishing before anyone can get too close. A ghostly apparition of a parachutist has been seen stuck in mid-air, perpetually falling from the sky. And the ghost of a former gamekeeper is said to roam the woods carrying a cane and wearing a wide-brimmed hat. A spectral cyclist has been seen riding his bike along the paths of the woods before disappearing into thin air. And from what must be centuries ago, the apparition of a young monk has been seen wandering the woods, lost and confused. One of the more unsettling stories of Cannock Chase, however, is that of a beast known as the Pigman. If local legend is to be believed, this monster owes its origins to the end of the Second World War, when American and British scientists began to conduct some peculiar experiments. Rumour has it that the Pigman was born of one such trial after it went drastically wrong. It's been a legend in local school playgrounds for decades, and numerous accounts from locals paint quite a startling picture. Two ramblers in the early 1990s were walking around Castle Ring when they heard strange noises coming from the trees. Spooked and retreating quickly towards their car, one of them turned round to see a creature 7 feet tall, its head too big for a human, with an elongated face and a snout-like nose. Understandably terrified, the couple fled at some speed into their car, slamming and locking the doors. Although they were not followed, their retreat was accompanied by the distinctive high-pitched squealing of a pig. Another account from a bat enthusiast surfaced as recently as 2024. Whilst listening out for signs of a bat colony in the woods, he found himself being stalked by a huge creature. He described it as being 10 feet tall, with the head of a pig, its body covered in thick black fur. He also wasted little time in making his escape. When he got home, his wife told him immediately that he'd obviously encountered the infamous Pigman of Cannock Chase, but being a seasoned local, she had little sympathy. Perhaps the most infamous story of this area is that of the black-eyed child. The legend of this ghost stems from the 1970s, when a young couple, while strolling through the woods, encountered a young girl dressed in old-fashioned clothing with entirely black eyes. She appeared abruptly and asked for help in an innocent, childlike voice. They described her as being accompanied by an overwhelming sense of fear and dread, even before they'd seen her face. Since then, some have said she hypnotizes people to whom she appears, and after an encounter with her, many have reported headaches and nausea. Local superstition says that the girl may not even be of this planet, as she seemingly transports herself floating from tree to tree. One paranormal theory, however, is that she is a manifestation of the spirits of victims from a 19th century diphtheria outbreak, a disease that causes severe damage to the eyes. Following that rather gruesome tale, we leave Cannock Chase and head for one of the most haunted villages in the country, Prestbury. In the Middle Ages, this village had its own market and fair, but these medieval traditions have been somewhat overshadowed by the growth of Cheltenham, and it's now more or less a suburb of the broader city. The village centre, with its old church, has, however, managed to preserve its identity. But we begin our journey here tonight because it's renowned as the most haunted village in all of England. The village is said to be haunted by more than 24 ghostly apparitions. We start our investigation outside the church. There's evidence to suggest there was a church here before the times of the Domesday Book, and it is here that the most widely spotted phantom can be found. He's known as the Black Abbot, and is regularly seen in the precincts of the church and the graveyard. He can sometimes be spotted in the High Street too, most commonly on the 3 festival days of Christmas, Easter and All Saints' Day. Now the Cotswolds was far from spared the ravages of war. Both medieval conflicts and the English Civil War affected many settlements in the Cotswolds, and Prestbury is no exception. It is said that several ghostly horsemen have been seen galloping the lanes of this ancient place. One, a medieval rider who was evidently heading to Edward IV camp at Tewkesbury during the War of the Roses, was supposedly shot with a bow and arrow. During 20th century roadworks, a skeleton was discovered with an arrow lodged in its ribs. Could this be the mortal remains of the medieval spectre seen galloping through the village by night? Another horseman appears as a cavalier speeding through Prestbury, apparently during the Civil War. Prestbury's sympathies lay almost entirely with the parliamentarians, and they set up a number of primitive roadblocks to fortify the village against the king's army. These were rudimentary but effective, simple lengths of rope tied across the roads. This cavalier rode right into one stretched across Mill Lane, flinging him from his horse. Some men from the village lying in wait were quick to grab the unfortunate man and executed him on the spot. It's here that his spirit roams, riding his horse at full pelt, moments before he fell from his steed. Walnut Cottage on Tatchley Lane is also said to be haunted. An old man who used to be a handyman there haunts the dining room and is alleged to speak to visitors. Not far away, at the former Prestbury House Hotel, a young waitress dressed in 19th century clothes appears to check in on other staff. Perhaps she stems from when the house was used as a tea room, serving racegoers at the nearby Cheltenham races. Strangely enough, a famous racing jockey by the name of Fred Archer grew up in Prestbury and moved to Newmarket when he was 10. He became a huge success, but ended up taking his own life. His ghost has been seen all over Newmarket, but it is thought possible he haunts Prestbury too. In the 1970s, a group of women spotted a jockey crossing the street just in front of the King's Arms. As he made his way across the road, however, he vanished into thin air. Could this have been Fred? Opposite the King's Arms is Sundial Cottage. Here, another young girl is said to sit and play the spinet. Her music has been heard by a family that stayed here during the Second World War, and she was seen by others on numerous occasions. Prestbury is bursting with numerous tales of ghostly sightings, so do come and visit it for yourself. So here ends tonight's whistle-stop tour of the most haunted places in the United Kingdom. So don't forget to subscribe for more ghostly videos, and we'll see you again next time. For exclusive videos and early access, don't forget you can also become a Ghostly Trails member. And if you want to listen to a monthly ghost story read by me, join our Ghost Story Archive over on Patreon. Check the links below.